All right, so we're going to go through this PowerPoint, the pages that you have there, and we're talking today a lot about how we prepare to teach. And I want to stress that this is not just for children, this is not just for Sunday school, this is teaching anybody, any age. We can't compromise our message, it says, but our methods are not sacred. Our methods must adjust to each generation. Man's knowledge has increased more in 50 years than it did thousands of years previously. For example, can any of you think of a teaching method that was used when you were in school that is not used now? What?
A blackboard and chalk.
Well, yeah, okay, we do have it, but a lot of teachers don't use it. When I was in school, it was slide projectors, okay, or cassette tapes, okay? You just wouldn't do it today. And you will find in some of your reading that you have today, some of the older methods are referred to, but I'm very well aware we have to move with the times. You know, my grandchildren know more about computers than I do, you know, and they can operate all kind of things that I don't have a clue about. So we don't change our message, but our methods have to adjust. Very important. So when you're beginning to teach, you have a cycle, an organizational cycle. You set a goal, you fire the trigger, and you ask yourself, did we accomplish? You aim, you fire, aim, teach, and fire. Okay? You want to have an aim in your teaching, and you want to be able to see results from what you have done. And this is the one thing, I think I mentioned it last month. In teaching, you don't always see, or in fact, you seldom see immediate results. But it's long-term results that you may see. And the thing is, too, you may never even know. But when you see people's lives change, that's your fulfillment. That's you being able to know, I might have had a small part in helping them to develop. Okay, so if we go on to the next page, you have a handout that you are going to be asked to read that looks like this, called Preparing to Present. And this is broken down into 7 aspects. When you begin to prepare, this is what you should do. Now, a lot of people will make all their plans for anything, even in life, a job, whatever, buying a house, whatever. And they'll make all their plans and then they'll say, oh, God bless it. Okay? What do we do first before we make our plans? We pray first, okay? So that God will direct our plans. I know people right now who are suffering because they made plans without proper prayer and consultation, and now they're suffering. They thought it was a blessing, but if they had counseled with their pastor, if they had really prayed about it, they would have seen, no, this is not a wise choice we're making. Okay, so it's very important that we pray first. All right, then we want to research. That doesn't mean that you write a thesis paper, but that you study. You seek to understand what you're teaching. Then if you use a teacher's manual, which we'll talk about that more at a later time, but you edit it. You make it adaptable for what you're going to teach. Some of you teach home Bible studies, and we're going to be talking about that. I'm not going to go into the Bible study book and read every single word that's there. I'm going to pull out what I can use and what's adaptable to the students I'm teaching. Then you plan. How am I going to share this information? Then you assemble your teaching aids, okay? Anything you're going to do to enhance the lesson, all right? Then you, after all that, you review it all. Is this all good? Is it going to work? Is it applicable for my audience? And then if you've done all that, you can sit back and enjoy, okay, as you teach. So this handout here, which is part of your reading for this month, goes through these steps. And you need to read this carefully. As I said, some of it uses a few outdated. You should have it. Does everybody have it?
Yeah.
Okay, it should be at the end of your papers. Yeah. Okay.
Towards the end.
Some of these methods, even in this lesson, may be a little bit outdated, but I think you can get the idea. So in order to prepare, we pray, research, edit, plan, assemble aids, review, and if we do it all in that order, we can sit back and enjoy. I love to be totally prepared to teach, and then I can totally enjoy it. But there have been the occasions where I have gone in and I've maybe crammed at the last minute, or I've not really studied as I should, and I try to wing it. You heard that term? Okay. You can't enjoy it then because you're under such pressure. How am I going to do this right? What do my notes say? Oh, I forget, you know. But if you really plan and prepare this way, you can enjoy teaching. And that's one of my greatest enjoyments, is being able to do that. So, going on then, we look at methods. Make a list of all possible methods and choose the one that's best suited to your class, to your lesson, and to you. And we're going to talk about all different kinds of methods that you can use. All right? What will best help me reach the goal that I'm trying to do? Even when I was preparing for this class, I thought, what is the best method? What's going to help me reach the goal to inspire you to be a good and prepared teacher? All right? So on the next page, page 3, we have methods that can be used for large groups. Okay? And there's 11 of them listed there. Okay, Callum, would you read out those methods to us?
Lecture, overhead, transparency, PowerPoint, black and white, whiteboard, drama, film, videos, slides, DVDs, math charts, debates, panel discussion,
Symposiums.
educational outings, work groups, discussion groups.
All right, so leave that list there, and then you find this paper here that says overhead transparencies. Okay, if you're teaching a large group, I'm talking about if you're teaching dozens or hundreds of people, and don't say, oh, well, I'll never do that. You don't know what you might do. Okay? We're going to look at methods. Now, we're going to leave lecture for right now. We're going to study lecture later. But find this paper right here that says overhead transparencies. Okay? Now, I am an old fogey. I prefer to call it retro. I still use an overhead transparency, whereas Jim and Ashton, it wouldn't even cross their mind to use an overhead transparency. Okay? It's totally out of their generational thinking. Okay? But I do prefer it over PowerPoint. But whatever you're going to do, even these things apply to PowerPoint. It's easy to store. It makes note-taking easier. You can have all kinds of color and zoom in, zoom out, all kinds of styles, all kinds of lettering you can use. And the one thing you do have to be careful, even when you're making PowerPoints, don't make them so busy that zoom, 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 zoom. You know, it's all over the page. Have you ever seen a PowerPoint like that? There's too much action on it. You just need to put your points there and let people take their notes, okay? And so overhead transparencies or PowerPoint are great teaching tools. But let me just say at the outset in looking at all this method, does anybody know what the worst method to use in teaching is? Anybody know what the worst method? That's coming up to the close, Brother Jim. Okay, he's just looking at his papers like that. The worst method to use in teaching is the one that's used all the time. Okay? In other words, don't use the same thing all the time. If every single class you teach has a PowerPoint, what will happen? That gets old. It's boring. Okay? So your class needs to know, I'm going to be there, or the teacher's going to be there, we're going to have a lesson, it's going to be good, but other than that, I don't know what she's going to do. Okay? You don't know what to expect now because I've got this on. Okay? So use different methods. If I came in every single month in a costume, you think, oh boy, well now what are we doing? Okay? Or if I just read off of a paper every single month. Okay? So variety is the key. You want variety in your teaching. All right. Elizabeth said Blackboard and white is outdated, but Blackboard is still used some. A whiteboard is used as well. And what's very important, this is just a seemingly silly little hint, but this is especially true if you're teaching children. Why do you not turn your back and write on the blackboard?
Because they carry on.
Yeah, because who knows what can happen while your back's turned. So you always write like this. One eye, you know how they say parents have eyes around their head, well teachers definitely do. Okay? The other thing is, when you're using a blackboard or a whiteboard, you don't say, I love Jesus, and then you write it on the board. Why? They've heard you say it. They don't need to look at the board. Okay? But if you are teaching and you get up here to write at the board, I love, you talk as you're writing. Okay? That way they have to be following you. That sounds silly and insignificant, but it's true. And it keeps their attention on what you're doing. Same thing with a whiteboard. All right, drama. Drama has very high retention rate. The one thing you're going to remember out of this class today is the dramatic part. I can tell you that. I'll ask you in 6 months and you'll say, I'll say, what did we do in September? And all I have to say is drama, and you'll remember. Okay? Drama is very effective. The thing about drama, and sometimes men have a hard time with this, you know, Sharon's fantastic at this, but you have to lose yourself.
Yeah.
You have to forget about yourself. You have to forget about the fact that you may look stupid.
Yeah.
Okay? But that's what makes it effective.
Mhm.
All right? So it's very important that you lose yourself, and we're going to talk more about storytelling.
Just men are uncomfortable with that?
Well, some women too. Okay, some women. All right, then you'll see on the next page, again, a little bit outdated, but nevertheless still effective, films, video slides, or DVDs. Okay, it's nice to take a break sometimes. I know Brother Jonathan does this sometimes. He has a film he shows to his doctrine class. It's called The Case for Christ. Okay, so this is another nice break. If there's something that you don't, you say, okay, class, we're going to do something different today. We're going to watch Mickey Mouse. Okay, it's got to be relevant. It's got to be enhancing the subject that you're teaching. All right, maps and charts, all of those things are helpful to have. They're portable, easy to obtain. You can have maps on PowerPoint. You can have maps on overhead transparencies. Debates, this is another thing. This is something that the Year 2 students sitting back here don't know they're going to get in the full time. But debates, you take a controversial
Done that at
issue.
school.
Huh?
I've done that at school.
You did that at school. Well, very good. You take a controversial subject, take abortion, okay? And you're going to have two opposing sides. Now, the opposing side may not really believe that abortion is wonderful, but for the sake of the debate, they're going to present the arguments. And this is a good thing to do. Obviously, you're not going to do this with 3-year-olds, but this is for older people. Panel discussions. A panel of people fields questions from the audience. That can be a good thing. A symposium is a much more intellectual thing where people come and they've written a paper on the oneness of God, and they're all going to present their papers and discuss it. Buzz groups, discussion groups. This is good. You divide a group up, you give them a question or questions to discuss, and you allow them to talk about it, and then they come back and report to the whole group. You can take time to read over all these points. And then we will go on to the small group aspect. It's on the PowerPoint sheet. Okay, so those are all things, like I said, we're going to come back and talk more about lecture. But for small groups, okay, Tony, would you read those 7 points under small groups? Right here on this page, page number 3 at the bottom of your PowerPoint. Okay?
Creative writing, sample response, discussion, brainstorming, research reports, case studies, open-ended tours.
All right, and then again, you have another handout that says creative writing at the top. Okay? Creative writing. I'm sorry, I'm having you do all kind of paper shuffling today. Okay, so these are methods that can be more effective in small groups. Creative writing, and this is one that I really, really believe in, and I'd love to see more people develop. Why is writing so effective? Writing is effective because it will outlive you. Okay, somebody writes a book, they die, the book is still in circulation. Okay, so things that you write, people can keep, and they may forget what you say, but oh, I got that little card from Sharon. What an inspiration to me. Okay, or just anything that can be written, an article. And here's all kinds of examples. Letter writing, newspaper articles, story writing, poetry, musical lyrics, skits, drama, prayers, book reviews, a paraphrase of a biblical story, opinions or response to a lesson, surveys, questionnaires, research papers, journals, open-ended stories. And we'll talk more what that is. Okay, here, I just brought some samples today. One time I was teaching a class on Acts, and what they did is they put together a whole little newspaper about the book of Acts. Okay, I don't remember anything about the class, but I do have this in writing. Okay, and all the different things about the book of Acts, activities to do about the book of Acts. Okay, another thing that I found was on the book of Acts, a reporter's journal. And this I made up for kids to fill in, all kinds of things, on just as a news reporter. Okay, and then we have this book in the library, it's called the Tabloid Bible. This is kind of a fun thing. And you find Gideon, my son, army facing massive redundancies. Okay, and it's written on the story of Gideon. Okay, so there's all kinds of things you can do with writing, and this is a nice thing for small groups if they can be involved in something on this order. Okay, circle response. Okay, circle response is where I get everybody that's in the class together, and we give one question, and everybody has to give an answer to that question. I mean, what do you think about the weather? Okay, so I just throw that out. Maybe Elizabeth might have something to say, Sharon might have something to say, and you two just sit there. But in a circle response, everybody has to give their answer. So that involves everybody. Whereas opposed to discussion, and we're going to talk more about discussion in a later class, discussion, I can have a discussion about the weather, and again, Sharon and Elizabeth may be the only ones to talk. So what do I, as a discussion group leader, I have to draw you guys in and say, what do you think, type of thing. But discussion is an effective thing. When you maybe think of a class you've been in and there's been good discussion, it kind of makes you feel a part of it. You're getting to contribute your ideas. It's not just standing listening to a teacher, but you get to contribute your ideas. So discussion is good, and we'll talk more about that. Brainstorming, on the back of the page. Brainstorming. The leader presents a question or a problem to solve. What are we going to do about the war in Afghanistan? And everybody just starts popping off ideas that come into their head. Or how can we reach our community better? Everybody starts popping off ideas. There's no right or wrong. It's just a sharing of thoughts that come into your head, and then hopefully a plan can be made from that. Research paper, assign a topic, give a time limit. A case study. This is what a case study is. You present a hypothetical story, and when you read this, preparing to present, you'll get some examples. But a hypothetical story about a problem or a situation, and everybody has to give their thought about what would you do in this situation. Okay? So that's a case study. An open-ended story is a true or false story, but it has no ending. Okay? Sharon has really been going through a very difficult time in her life. She has really held on to God and trusted God through a lot of illness, but her illness is getting worse and worse. Sharon should, when you give your thoughts, what should Sharon do? Okay, that's an open-ended story. You're writing the rest of the story. Okay, that's what that is about. Now, there are things that are good for both large and small groups, as it says there. A listening team. A listening team can be, okay, I'm just going to give you a crazy example. At the beginning of the class, I say that I want Sharon and Elizabeth to listen for every time I say the word story. I want you two to listen for every time I say the word God. And so you have to listen to me, and you're making a tally. She said story. She said God. Okay? You're having to listen. What is effective is if I give you a set of questions or a fill in the blank, and you have to keep listening to know what I'm saying in order to complete that paper. Okay, so that is what a listening team is about. It can be done individually or in groups. Did we lose everybody?
We did.
Is it us or them?
It must be us if we lost everyone at once. Spinning those, so hopefully just a second.
Okay, interviews. This is another thing you can do. A real, biblical, or fictional character is interviewed by a moderator. Today, class, we're going to interview Moses. And so Moses may come in, he may be dressed in a costume, whatever. And I'm going to say, okay, Moses, what was it like leading 3 million people in the desert? Tell us, okay? What was it like, Moses, when there was no food to eat? What did you do? How did you feel? Okay, so that can be an interesting thing to do. And then storytelling, which we will talk about later as well. Okay, anybody coming back? No, I lose it. Or is she not there? Okay, let's let her see if she can get them back. Okay, what we're going to look at next is the values of lecturing and talking about lecturing. It actually starts at the bottom of page 4 of your PowerPoints. Okay, is Sunderland there? Sunderland, thumbs up, are you there? Good. Okay, we are right now at the bottom of page 4 on the PowerPoints, and we're going to talk about lecturing, okay? The pros and cons of lecturing. I think I told you last month about my Sunday school teacher, the 10-year-old girls, who stood up and read the Sunday school book for the entire hour, and that was all the lesson that we got, okay? That was basically a read lecture. We are not talking about, and I want to qualify this at the beginning, we are not talking about preaching, because I know that most preaching is basically a lecture, okay, in the truest form of the word, okay, but we are talking about teaching, and teaching is different from preaching. Now, I would like for you to, again, shuffle through your papers, and you should have a fill-in-the-blank paper. Where is mine?
Saucony vacuum.
Saucony vacuum.
That's it.
You're on here, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, do all of you have this paper? It's the Saucony vacuum study, and you're going to fill in the numbers that I give you. And this is to help you realize how important it is to have variety and visual things in your teaching. All right, so this is a study that was done years ago. The Saucony vacuum study revealed that when a class is conducted by using just lecture, students will remember 70% of what they heard 3 hours later. They will remember 70%, so you can write that in. 3 days later, they will only remember 10%. But when a student hears a lecture and sees visuals which accompany it, they will remember 85% 3 hours later, and 65% 3 days later. Through the Saucony vacuum research, they discovered that people learn 1% through taste, 1.5% through touch,
1.4%.
1.5, 1.5% through touch, 3.5 or 3.5% through smell, 11% through hearing, and 83% through sight.
Wow. That's high.
That's high. They also discovered that adults remember 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 80% of what they see,
Yeah.
50% of what they see and hear, 70% of what they say as they talk, and 90% of what they say as they do something. So, what does this mean to all of us? One of the standard quotes, watching you, of teaching.
Learning is
What learning is doing. Learning is doing. I can stand up here and lecture you for an hour on how to make a cake, but how will you learn it best? If you go in there and make the cake. Learning is doing. All right, so chew on this a bit. Has everybody got all the numbers right? I'm going to read it once more, make sure you have it right. Students will remember 70% of what they heard 3 hours later. 3 days later, they will remember only 10%. When a student hears a lecture and sees visual which accompany it, they will remember 85% 3 hours later and 65% 3 days later. Through the research, they discovered that people learn 1% through taste, 1.5% through touch, 3.5% through smell, 11% through hearing, and 83% through sight. They also discovered adults remember 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 80% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear, 70% of what they say as they talk, and 90% of what they say as they do something. All right, that's pretty interesting. It really is. And it makes for the case about lecturing. Straight lecturing can be, number one, boring, and number two, just a complete turn-off to students. All right, but there are some values. Look on page 5, there's some values of lecturing. You need to fill in the blank here. A large quantity of information is transmitted. If I want to get a large quantity of information to you, I just stand up here and talk, and give you everything that you need to hear. Now you probably won't remember it, especially if you don't take notes, okay? But a large quantity of information is transmitted. Control. The teacher is in control of material, emphasis, and the time element. If I know I've got 5 minutes, I'm going to control it through planning how much time I can say in 5 minutes. Lecture does save time. A lot of material is covered in a short amount of time. The personality of a teacher is foremost in a lecture. If you have a happy teacher, it's going to come through in the lecture. If you have a very dour person, that's going to come through. And this is the saving factor. You can combine a lot of other teaching techniques with a lecture. Basically, that's what I'm doing today. You can combine a variety of other teaching techniques with a lecture. What are the limitations? The next box. Often, there is minimum participation from the class. Okay, you just sit there digesting or writing everything I'm saying. And I don't know if you're understanding or anything. You're just doing what you're told. Okay? Number 2, individual differences between teacher's opinion and student's opinion can develop. Okay? And usually in a straight lecture, there's no time for discussion. So it's just individual differences between teacher's opinion and student's opinion develop. Number 3, attention can lapse. Just because a class is quiet, it doesn't mean they're listening. They may be sleeping or daydreaming. The other day I'm driving my car and I know where I need to go. Before I know it, I've gone way off the other way. I'm just daydreaming, okay? And that can happen so easily in a class. Students may be left with unanswered questions. In a straight lecture, there's no time for questions. There's no time for interaction. It's just you take this and that's what you get. All right? Going on to the next page, limitations of lecturing on page 6, number 5. Students may have something valuable to contribute, but may not get the opportunity. Number 6, lecture requires more skill than any other teaching method to keep it interesting. Sadly, many times the teacher with the least skill uses it the most. Why do you think that is? They're scared to try something different. They're scared to make an idiot of themselves and dress up like I am right now. Okay? They're just scared. Okay? They feel if I've got my notes right here and this is what I'm going to say and I don't move from this lectern, I stand right here and follow my notes, I can get this all done. Learning is doing. Okay? Straight lecture. It really requires a lot of skill. And remember, I'm not talking about preaching. I'm talking about teaching. All right? Also, personality clashes can develop between teacher and student. A lot of times because there's no chance for interaction. All right, so there are times when you should use a lecture method. The bottom of page 6. Number 1, to introduce a series of lessons to stimulate interest and explanation. All right, Callum, read number 2.
Just summarize the series of the lessons.
All right, Sharon, number 3.
To present material that is unavailable to class, if they can find it themselves later.
All right, number 4, Tony.
To use as background for discussion.
Number 5, Elizabeth.
To fulfill a specific knowledge aim.
Someone from Sunderland, read number 6.
When the time element is short.
Okay, so these are times when a lecture is appropriate, okay? But it doesn't mean you go for hours doing it. All right, so questions to ask yourself as you prepare a lecture. Someone else from Sunderland, read number 1.
Why are you using the lecture method?
Okay, why am I using it? Do I have to get this done in a short amount of time? Or is there something better I could do? All right, the next one, number 2, Sunderland.
Must I lecture the entire lesson?
Must I lecture for the entire lesson? I have that choice every month. Am I going to stand up here for 1 hour and lecture you and you not do anything? Okay. Number 3, Leo. Oh, fiddlesticks.
Fiddlesticks is right, Sister Kelley.
All right, let's go on. How will I secure and maintain attention, interest, and involvement? Tony, read number 4.
Do I frequently repeat unreviewed main points?
All right, and number 5, Callum.
Do I lead to a logical quote and climax or conclusion?
All right, number 6, Sharon.
Is the outline of the lesson clear and is it consistent with your aim of teaching?
Number 7, Elizabeth.
Am I using visual aid? If not, why not?
Okay, yes. Is there not a picture? Is there not a map? Is there not a blackboard? Is there not something I can do besides stand here at this lectern and talk to you for an hour? All right. Number 8, Tony.
What illustrations have I incorporated? Verbal or pictorial?
Okay, so what have I done to enhance this presentation? All right, we're on page 7 at the bottom in the box. Number 9, Callum, would you read that?
Number 9. Am I answering all potential questions that the students might have or leaving time for them to ask questions?
And number 10, this is a very important prayer. Oh Lord, fill my mouth with worthwhile stuff and nudge me when I've said enough. Okay? Because what happens, sometimes people finish long before they stop. You know what that means? Okay? Have you ever seen the cartoon? And again, I'm not talking about preaching, but I'll just share this cartoon. The pastor, listen to this, Brother Jim. The pastor asks everybody to stand up. He's going to conclude, and the wife nudges her husband and says, he's good for another 20 minutes. Okay? Because sometimes people go on. My husband does that. He'll have people stand thinking it's going to make him stop, and it doesn't. It doesn't. Okay? But, and it's usually always very, very good. It's always very good. Not usually. It's always very good. Okay? But you have to learn to stop.